Three, two, one. We have the Democratic nominee for Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Thaddeus Thad Hamilton, with us today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We have a couple of questions when we have new candidates who come in that we need to run through before we get to the substance of the particular office. And we ask this of every candidate who comes in. It's part of a background check that we do. Have you ever been arrested before?
No.
Okay. And have you ever declared bankruptcy?
No.
Okay. Well, let's get to the issue at hand, or the issues at hand then. Why are you challenging Adam Putnam for this position?
Well, I have over 40 years experience in agriculture and environment, and I have been blessed. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to be here today and giving unto God, through whom all things are possible. And I do feel that my campaign is a gift that God has given me. Over 40 years experience in agriculture and environment. I graduated from the University of Arkansas in Pine Bluff with a degree in agriculture. And I also retired from the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service after 36 years. I've worked in agriculture for over 40 years, and I worked at the local, state, and national. God has given me a talent and a skill that will fit the Commission of Agriculture, because we must unite the entire state of Florida, the urban, the agriculture, and the environment. And I do believe that I am the most qualified individual in the recent history for this cabinet seat.
Well, what makes you more qualified than Commissioner Putnam?
Well, I have more years of experience than he has been on this earth. I do have a degree in agriculture. I've worked with farmers and ranchers across this nation. I worked for the USDA for 36 years at the local, state, and national level. I worked on BMPs. I worked on the 1996 Farm Bill. I represented the USDA on the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force. I work with best management practices with our farmers and ranchers. I've developed the coastal best management practices on how we're going to actually stabilize our beaches throughout the state, and these BMPs are used throughout the nation. 40 years experience hands-on at the local, state, national, and administrative level is kind of hard to beat.
Now, you need to not only convince voters to hire you, but also to fire Commissioner Putnam. Why should Commissioner Putnam be fired?
Well, not that Commissioner Putnam should be fired. Commissioner Putnam is a nice young man, and he has had a great career in Congress. But the thing is that as the Thaddeus Thad Hamilton, who is also a retired colonel from the United States Army, has the knowledge, skills, and ability to bring the state of Florida together, because I have worked hands-on in the agriculture industry and the environment industry. We need to unite the urban, the agriculture, and the environment. We have to educate 19 million people on our total ecosystem problems, from non-point source pollution and in the urban areas and the agriculture areas, and how do we create a clean, health, safety environment. Water, as you know, is the #1 natural resource for the state of Florida. It is Florida's goal. We must make sure our waterways are totally cleaned up before anything gets into our waterways. We have a lot of work to do. We have to get into our schools. We have to get away from the fossil fuels. We need to have solar, wind. We need to have alternative forms of energy that we are not pushing and promoting here in the state of Florida. We have to unite the people in the state of Florida, because we have to have a sustainable state.
You were saying that we need to get into the schools, and schools is one of the areas that Commissioner Putnam made kind of his signature campaign, changing how food service was conducted, or overseen in this state. What would you do differently?
Well, number one is our school system. We're number, 47th in the country? Florida, I think, is number 47. We have to raise the entire education system from the bottom to the top. We have to make education a top priority. As we educate, our students, because I was among the first to set up outdoor classrooms in Broward County going back into the 80s. I was the one that developed the BMPs, and if you go to Broward County, you see that we have our beaches, for the most of our beaches in Broward County, they're about 2 to 4 feet, and some places 6 feet higher than the ocean is right now. We did that with the kids. We developed the best management practices on how to stabilize our beaches. Up until then, we were spending $40 million, $50 million a year in re-nourishment, and it was blowing and washing away.
Okay, well, I'm a little confused. How you're saying that we need to elevate the education level here because we're ranked 47th. How does the Commissioner of Agriculture play into that?
Well, see, the Commissioner of Agriculture is also one of our 4 cabinet members. Certain things are collectively and certain things are individually. We must fund our public school systems. We have a place for public and private schools and charter schools, but we must fund our public school system and make that number one. We must hold everybody accountable, from the governor to the Commissioner of Agriculture, all the way down to the superintendent, our school boards, our local elected officials, and then our teachers. And we must hold our parents, because we have a tremendous problem is that we want to blame the teachers, but we don't give them the resources that they need to raise the quality of standards. Some teachers, we should have teachers assistants in a lot of our classes. We need to have better teaching environment. We still have schools that are underfunded, that are having for mold, mildew, all kind of problems. We should have a nice education environment for every student in this state. And the Commissioner of Agriculture, as a cabinet member, those 4 cabinet members have the authority to actually put more funds into our education system to raise the quality of our education system. Then we need to take and tie the federal and the state, particularly with the Department of Agriculture. And we need to be matching our federal funds that's going to our colleges and universities. We need to be matching those funds from the state. For example, FAMU. A lot of cases, FAMU get a lot of more federal funds than they get state funds. That comes through the Commission of Agriculture. That shouldn't be happening. We need to make education number one priority, and our executive branch of our state government has the authority to make it the number one priority of the state, put the funds there, and we need to do away with a lot of our prisons. Education. We don't need to build a prison. We need to educate our kids. We need to ensure that they have a quality education, and that there's no education statewide, state in the nation should have a better education system than we have here in Florida.
How would we do away with prisons?
Education. We need to start from all the way from, in my opinion, from pre-kindergarten. And we need to go in and enhance from pre-kindergarten all the way through to make sure every student, not just talk about it, we need to make sure that every student has the quality of education, because a lot of times, if we don't address the individual needs, we talk about it. We got to do more than talk about it. I was on the Broward County School District Advisory Council for about 6 years. I have been still on the PTA of Sunland Park Elementary School. I've been on that PTA for many, many years. I have worked with over 100 schools, 150 schools in South Florida, even when I was actually working for the USDA. So I have been in the school system as part of my urban program with the United States Department of Agriculture. So we need to fund our school system. We need to hold everybody accountable, stop blaming our teachers, and then we need to make sure that we train our young parents. We need to train. We got a lot of young parents that need a lot of help. and a lot of training. And then we need to hold them accountable also.
Can you tell me, from your perspective, how has the Department of Agriculture here in Florida handled citrus greening?
Well, the citrus green is what we need to do with the citrus green. We're going to have to go outside of the state of Florida. Yes, the research that's going on, we need to continue that research, but we need to tie in with the USDA, and we need to use the United States. That's who I work for. We need to tie in with the USDA. We need to go back to the source of citrus green. We need to go back to the source and look at what's happening around the world and the source. What do we need to do to control it? And because basically right now we have to control it. Our citrus industry is in danger, and we cannot afford to let our citrus industry, no matter how much it costs, go down. Our agriculture industry is the backbone of this state and the backbone of this nation. We must do whatever it takes, but we must take the federal, the state, the local, and then look all around the world to see what is it we need to do to address this problem. Not try to do it just Florida. We need national and global assistance. We need to have that team. Whereas anything happen in Florida, we have a team of experts from around the world. All we have to do is pick up and say, hey, this is what's going on. We don't need to reinvent a wheel. We spend millions reinventing the wheel, developing BMPs that have been already developed. And we spend 7 years developing BMP. That's because we won't communicate.
There was a proposed research center that would have studied this particular issue, and also with the bee population here that was turned down last legislative session. Were you disappointed in that?
I wasn't surprised, because the present atmosphere in Tallahassee, in my opinion, has actually pushed the citizen aside. We have to get back to serving the needs of all the citizens, whether we're Democrats or whether we're Republican. Once you're elected, you represent everybody. And we know that we have a bee problem, we have a citrus problem, we have a snail problem, we have an invasive species problem. These problems we have to start addressing, and we have to, and in any time we have our elected officials that are not looking to address the issues and the problems that we have, it's time to get someone in Tallahassee that's going to represent us and take care of our problems before they become a crisis.
As you know, the Commissioner of Agriculture is also the Commissioner of Consumer Protection. How would you rate the job of consumer protection that the department has done under Commissioner Putnam, and what would you do differently?
Well, Commissioner Putnam has done a good job. He's a nice young man. The things that I would do different is I would educate. Every citizen in the state of Florida will know who Thaddeus Thad Hamilton is. They will know if you have a consumer problem, where do you go? If you have illegal foreclosure, where do you go? If you have a lemon problem, where do you go? I would make sure that every citizen in the state of Florida will know that we do have a Commissioner of Agriculture, and half of that is consumer services. That consumer services department will become #1 in consumer services. We will create a Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services Advisory Community Council, because 98% of the people that I have met across the state have any idea this magnificent consumer protection even exists. In South Florida, we depend on Help Me Howard, who maybe can solve 2 problems a year, maybe 3. That's who in South Florida people go to instead of going to the Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. If you ask 10 people in Broward County which is one of our most populated county, who is the Commissioner of Agriculture, they may say, is that elected or is that appointed? So if you don't know the services there that are there for you, how can you utilize them? We must ensure that our consumer services is the best in the country, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Is this your first attempt at public office, sir?
I am a county-wide elected official. I retired from the United States Department of Agriculture in 2006. In 2007, I was elected to the Broward Soil and Water Conservation District. Now, there are 63, I think there's 59 soil and water conservation districts throughout the state of Florida, covering 67 counties. We are the grassroots because we're non-paid, non-compensated, and in fact, it costs us a lot of money to do our elected job. But I knew that from working with the USDA for 36 years. I knew it was going to cost me money to do my elected job as a Broward Soil and Water Conservation District Board member. And then also in 2010, I did run for the Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, which was a great experience.
And so you're back 4 years later. What have you learned from 2010 that you're applying to the 2014 campaign?
You know, God is good. And it has been a blessing that I am sitting here before you today, because the difference is that we're building on reaching out and touching the average citizen. We're going into the communities. We're going underneath the shade trees. We're talking to from our people working. For example, today we were at the convention center, and I talked to as many workers at the convention center that I possibly could, just to walk up and introduce myself. People need to know that we care, that we do have someone that is not business as usual. I've been blessed. I retired from the United States Army. I'm a retired colonel from the United States Army. I'm retired from the United States Department of Agriculture. And so it's time that we really put the people first. We really need to go back and let people understand this is the largest democracy, second largest democracy in the world. Our elected officials are public servants. They serve the people. The government is the people, for the people, and by the people. That's what we have to do. We got to restore democracy in America.
Vegetable production is big in Florida, as you know. What role do you see the state playing, not only in keeping the vegetable industry strong here, but also making sure that it continues to grow?
Well, see, what we have to do is we're going to have to bond our partnership with the USDA. That's one of the things that the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service, those BMPs that are used on all our farms and all our ranches, that the state are implementing, we develop those BMPs. The USDA has all across this nation developed the BMPs many years ago. Even when we did the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force, those BMPs were USDA. We have been working to enhance and the vegetable industry, the whole agriculture industry in the state of Florida. We have a great partner that we need to partner with. And when you take the USDA and this Department of Agriculture working together, we can actually solve 90% of our agricultural problems more efficient, more cost-wise, and then we can actually bring more monies to the table to help the industry by creating a partnership. And that's what I have, even before I retired, I made sure I worked with the Broward Soil and Water Conservation District and the local Soil and Water Conservation District. These 59 districts are actually tied in to the Department of Agriculture, but you don't hear anything about them. These are all countywide or district-wide elected local people throughout the state of Florida. Then you have the USDA develop the BMPs, best management practices, that are utilized throughout our agriculture industry, throughout our urban industry, and people don't even know what's going on. So, and we still have a divide there. We shouldn't have a divide. We need to have the federal, the state, local working together. We're 98% alike. Why are we going to worry about the 2% that we're different? What does it matter if it's federal monies or state monies or local money? These are taxpayers' monies. We all should be working to serve the people of this state, because we have to make sure that the state is sustainable. And right now, we're not on a sustainable track.
How would you rate the environmental record of the sugar industry in Florida?
The environmental record in Florida, we need to look at the whole environmental record, because right now we're getting to that 2% difference that I mentioned earlier. The sugar industry has its problems, but most of those problems, the USDA has been working with the sugar industry on those best management practices, building fertilizer and chemical mixing station, recycling of your tailwater recovery system, minimalizing the amount of fertilizer and maximizing your production. That's what we did as the USDA. You know, non-point source pollution is our #1 pollution problem, and that's far greater than just the agriculture industry. Right now, we're blaming the agriculture industry, and that's why we're not addressing our large problem. Everything from junkyards, litter that's thrown down, septic tanks that are illegal or improperly installed, junkyards, the list of non-point source pollution, which is the #1 pollution problem in the nation, in the state, and right here in Orlando. The runoff, the inch of rain, the first inch of rain that hits that street is totally polluted, and it goes right into our ecosystem. When you start the carbon, you hear about mercury. Mercury comes from a combustible engine. We got how many hundreds of thousands of engines running around here? That runoff gets into our system. We have to educate the public on our problem and not point the finger. We need to continue to work with the agriculture and the sugar industry. We need to work with the urban too and the environment, and we need to stop the fight that's going on. That fight is in pointing the finger. Everything we point, remember, is one pointing back at us. We have to take the watershed approach to conservation, and if we take that approach, we're all in this ecosystem together, and educate every citizen on the true problem, not the perception, but the truth, and how we solve it. Together we can do it.
Well, when you talked about cleaning up water, the need to clean up water in Florida, and I've heard what you just said about non-point source pollution, but the sugar industry and other major players in agriculture are often working against legislative proposals that would impose stricter regulations with the goal of reducing water pollution. So I'm wondering whether or not you would be, whose side you'd be taking in that.
Why should we take a side? Let's find out what the problem is. Tell me one legislator that we have that can actually go in to develop a best management practice on an agricultural farm, or develop a BMP that's going to protect our urban areas and reduce the contaminants getting into our system. I have worked hands-on since 1980 here in Florida, and I was on a national staff, so I could go anywhere in the country working in agriculture. I work with the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force Working Group representing the USDA, and I tell you what, the #1 stakeholder is always and still being left out, and that's the people. And so we throwing money at an illusion of a problem is not solving the problem. It's a waste. And we have too many people trying to make laws to regulate an illusion instead of finding out what the true problem is, addressing those problems, saving our taxpayers' money, increasing and protecting our environment. The same people that will try to pass these laws. Give an example. 2011, Fort Lauderdale Beach. the Mine Condominium Association. There was a natural dune on that beach. It was 150 feet wide in diameter. It was 5 feet high, had rare and endangered plants on it. I'm under oath because I helped develop the best management practices to stabilize our coastal system. Guess what the state attorney asked me? How much experience I had in dune destruction. And the Commissioner of Agriculture, who this comes under, allowed them to demolish this sand dune that was part of the whole ecosystem. And they used the courts to do it because they didn't address the whole ecosystem. That natural sand dune was not blocking no view. It was not close to no condominium. It was 600 plus feet away from the condominium. They wanted to make a point. Now we're going to spend $40 million to renourish our beaches and then not stabilize them. And then these are the people that we're going to say you're concerned about the environment. Let's take a look at and truly protect our environment. Let's protect our beaches by using the best management practices, reducing and stabilizing, building up those beaches, taking our kids and teaching them how to stabilize and how important our environment is. So when our elected officials have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to truly address our problem, then we can get something done.
Earlier in our conversation, you called Florida water Florida's gold, and we've got ranchers seeking permits to draw millions of gallons of water a day. So agricultural use of water must be considered along with industrial municipal use of water here in the state. How would you as agriculture commissioner encourage further conservation of water and agricultural use?
Well, actually, I would take the watershed approach. The watershed approach to conservation. That means that I almost moved that. Take Orlando, for example. The city of Orlando and surrounding area is in a watershed. Every drop of rain that comes in here is in that watershed. And whether it goes out, stays in, gets polluted, whatever, we need to look at the whole ecosystem. We need like an ecosystem of Florida. We need to look at what do we need to do to make sure we have a sustainable state 300, 400, 500 years from now. How are we going to go in, clean up the environment, clean up the water, and at the same time, the quality and quantity of water should be protected. So it's not just saying, okay, this particular rancher or this particular farmer or this particular development. We need to go in, have a 200, 300, 400 year plan. We need to look at the whole ecosystem and how do we meet the needs of the citizens of Florida to make sure this is a sustainable state. Not just talk about the sustainability. We need to have a sustainable state, and we need to address the cleanliness of our water, the total cleanliness, not just the phosphates and the other basic chemicals. We need to look at the quality of water. We need to look at protecting the water as it comes in and the proper utilization of it. It's a very complex situation, but it takes looking at and you implementing the watershed approach, and that's the proven approach for water conservation.
I believe was there anything else we didn't ask you about that you wanted to touch on before we conclude?
Well, I think you asked quite a lot of excellent questions, but one thing that I would like to say, we must reach out and educate 18.5 million people on how critical Florida's Commission of Agriculture and Consumer Services is, how it affects our life. And we need to take a look at the consumer protection, which has been neglected. We need to look at everything from our gasoline and our gasoline industry. We need to look at our oil industry. We need to look at everything dealing from fracking to offshore drilling, everything that's going to impact Florida's ecosystem. Because right now, if we allow fracking, it's going to destroy our drinking water. if we're not careful, we have, you know, hundreds of BP oil spills ready to happen right now, and the BP oil spill is not going away. It's in the ocean. It will wash up. It may be another 5 or 10 years, but we will feel the effects of it. We need to preserve and protect our resources. We need to educate our people, and we must make sure we put consumer protection. Illegal foreclosures need to be taken care of. Our consumers must know exactly. If you have a consumer problem, you go to the Florida Commission of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and you hold Thaddeus Thad Hamilton personally responsible if he's not doing his job as your next Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services.
We thank you very much for coming in.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Thank you. I really appreciate it.